Sheikh Hasina's 15-year consecutive rule over Bangladesh has come to an end. The daughter of Banga Bandhu, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Hasina once in fact helped rescue Bangladesh from military rule. She presided over breakneck economic growth over the last decade and a half in a country once written off by the US statesman Henry Kissinger as an irredeemable basket case. But her long rule has come to an end as protesters stormed her residence. Shocking scenes came in from Dhaka that have made headlines as we saw protesters defying the military curfew to march into the capital's center. As troops pulled back and internet access was restored, tens of thousands of people began to celebrate in the streets following Sheikh Hasina's resignation. Forced to flee her country, Hasina has taken refuge in India for the time being as she plans on her next moves. The reigns of the longest-serving Prime Minister of Bangladesh have come to an abrupt end. Yet, it is important to take a look at the larger picture. This ouster has not occurred overnight. And let me now take a moment to take our viewers through everything that has happened in Bangladesh in the recent months. In January this year, general elections were held in Bangladesh. These elections followed months of growing tensions that saw political protests turn violent. For months leading up to the polls, the main opposition party, the Bangladesh National Party, the BNP, called on Hasina to step down in favor of a caretaker government to oversee the election process. She rejected this request and the BNP ultimately staged a boycott. 7 countries issued promptly a joint statement. Australia, Japan, Canada, South Korea, Norway, United Kingdom and United States expressed deep concern, quote unquote. Although marred with contention, the election saw the Sheikh Hasina-led Awami League secure a landslide victory, bagging 224 out of the total 300 seats. The mandate of 170 million people in Bangladesh was rather clear. However, the voter turnout presented a different perspective. Pegged at merely 41.8%, it was the second lowest in the history of Bangladesh. This now led to many controversies. The US Department of State said that elections were not free and fair, and they expressed regret that not all parties participated. The UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office termed the election lacking the preconditions of democracy. It maintained that respect for human rights, rule of law was not abided by. A tumultuous start to her 4th consecutive term did not, however, deter Sheikh Hasina. In a bid to consolidate ties with regional powers, she chalked out visits to both India and China. Hasina visited India for 2 days in June. During this visit, India and Bangladesh signed 10 new MOUs to further cooperation in the fields of connectivity, energy and infrastructure. River water sharing, a scheme for medical patients and the launch of UPI in Bangladesh was also discussed. In contrast, Hasina's visit to China spanned 4 days. She held a slew of bilaterals with top brass of the CCP, including President Xi Jinping himself and the Prime Minister. Following this, 27 MOUs were inked, yet Sheikh Hasina abruptly cut her visit short. She was reportedly upset that China did not live up to its promises of extending a credit of $5 billion. In the midst of this all, discontent was brewing within Bangladesh. On the 5th of June this year, the High Court in Dhaka declared Sheikh Hasina's 2018 order to scrap the quota system null and void. Her government's decision was branded illegal, and the High Court reinstated 30% quotas for descendants of freedom fighters. This, viewers, triggered a wave of protests, mainly amongst the student community. On the 1st of July, protests broke out at Dhaka University. Students and teachers alike declared a strike. Within a week, the demonstration spread across the nation and a nationwide Bangla Bandh was declared. Protesters took to the streets. They threw up barricades across key intersections and blocked highways and railway lines. Although Bangladesh's Supreme Court suspended the High Court order on the 10th of July, the situation took a turn for the worse. The demonstrations soon turned violent, with protesters clashing with the cops. Reports of extrajudicial killings and torture intensified these protests. Hasina did express her condolences and also appealed for peace, yet the violence did not quell. The shutting down of 4G internet services did not help the situation either. Protesters set fire to headquarters of state broadcaster, the BTV, as well as the National Disaster Management Agency in Dhaka. As the demonstrations raged on, Hasina shifted the blame to opposition parties and alleged sabotage as well as foreign influence. However, her heavy-handed moves, particularly the curfews and internet outages, continued to fuel the protests. Things started looking up, however, when the Supreme Court of Bangladesh slashed quotas for the descendants of veterans to a mere 5%. The primary demand of the protesters, that is to reinstate a system based on merit, was in fact fulfilled. Yet, the deaths that resulted from Sheikh Hasina's attempts to suppress the protests sowed the seeds of widespread discontent. The protesters were not satisfied with the reduction in the quotas. Their demands, in fact, changed entirely. They called for Sheikh Hasina's resignation. Hasina doubled down as well, intensifying the crackdown against the protests. Even as public anger continued to boil, the army was ordered to crush the protests at any cost. This to and fro between the protesters and the army resulted in 440 people losing their lives. The situation soon reached a tipping point. The military refused to fire against the protesters. They turned on Sheikh Hasina. Cornered, she had no choice but to flee. Reports now suggest that Bangladesh's army chief Wakar-uz-Zaman gave Hasina a mere 45 minutes to resign. The irony is that Hasina is the one who appointed him as army chief. He's the one who's ousted her, not only from power but also from the country. Following Hasina's departure, Bangladesh President Mohammad Shahabuddin promptly announced the dissolution of the Bangladesh Parliament. Meanwhile, an interim government is now set to take charge. What has taken place in Bangladesh prompts us to ask, why exactly did the Bangladeshi army choose then to abandon Sheikh Hasina? Could a coup have happened without tacit acceptance of the Americans? What was the role that was played by Pakistan's ISI and the Chinese? I take this conversation forward with Major General Sheikh Hasina. We also have with us Pathikrit Pain. I have with me Pratim Bose as well.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.